Hey, what's up, everybody at Press for Truth? This is Brian, and today I wanted to talk to you and reveal to you a lot of the truths that you're not being told about the fentanyl opioid crisis that's gripping America, Canada, British Columbia, wherever you live. This is going on. I did watch this. It serves as a bit of an inspiration for me to make this video. It's very touching. It shows some of the corners and things that you're not learning, you're not seeing and hearing on the emotional side, and how deadly and pervasive this epidemic is. So I'd suggest you watch this. Again, that's some of the truths behind some of the numbers here. This is just exploding. I'm sure I don't have to go over all this with you guys. But the reality is we're in a media and government smokescreen, and there's a huge reason for this. We see our premier here in British Columbia, Christy Clark, and our health minister fighting drug overdoses, helping to keep British Columbians safe. Well, how exactly are you doing that? 916 people died in this province alone last year regarding fentanyl deaths. Someone's making a lot of money off of this, and it isn't exactly the organized crime or tanker trucks coming in from China or whatever they're calling it these days. That's not what it is. We're talking about a pharmaceutical industry. We're talking about hundreds of billions of trillions of dollars in profit each year. We got companies like Novartis. We're going to go over a few of those as we move forward. We're always looking for money and how to pay for this. What if we took some of the money out of these massive trillions of dollars of profits? Well, I'm going to show you what's going on and why they're not actually doing that. Firstly, with the media, again, they always want to steer the attention to some guy making meth or fentanyl or something in a trailer somewhere because they have to. Because that's $5.2 billion worth of advertising revenue that the pharmaceutical industry pays for. Now, our newspapers are struggling, and there's a lot of trust that's being disappeared from the media. So they really don't want to offend some of their biggest suppliers of cash, because if they do, they're going to be in a lot more trouble than they're already in. So if we look on the political side of the spectrum, we can see that some of these companies donate millions of dollars to campaigns all across the board, and it's liberals, Democrats, Republicans, whatever you want to call it, conservatives. The trend is always, of course, going upwards. This is a lot of money that's happening out here. So the money goes to the media from the pharmaceutical companies. The money goes to the government, elected officials from the pharmaceutical companies, and this trend is just continuing, right? So we can see that there's Hillary Clinton getting a lot of money from them. It's just pervasive. So let's take a look at something here. We have companies like Johnson & Johnson who make the fentanyl patch. We have Sandoz, who's owned by Novartis. We'll talk about some of the stuff that those guys do later. And what does our government turn around and do? Well, they, in fact, to protect Canadians, British Columbians, and of course in the States, you look in your pension plans, it's the same thing. They invest in these companies who make massive profits of selling painkillers and opioids to our kids, to our adults, to our teenagers. Same with British Columbia Investment Management Corporation, which of course looks after the pensions of the British Columbia politicians, Teva Pharmaceuticals. What do? They make fentanyl. So the BCIMC, the pension managers, how much money do these guys really get paid to invest in fentanyl and opioid manufacturers? It's actually quite a bit. You can see some of the stuff, some of the kind of money you can make being a pension fund manager and profiting off the high returns of those pharmaceutical companies. We're also going to touch a little bit on today about the hypocrisy about marijuana legislation, about CBD and stuff like that, where all these other drugs are 100% legal already. These drugs that kill people every day. A while back, we had 11 deaths in one day in British Columbia. That's legal. Marijuana is illegal. And we're trying to understand how long it takes to handle this file. Well, what's going on with this file? Why aren't we looking at some of the resources and what we're putting into ensuring that fentanyl, Percocets, Vicodin, all this stuff is legal, killing our kids and adults and teenagers, but we still can't figure out how to just go about legalizing this. I'll talk about that soon. One of the problems behind that is civil asset forfeiture, which now in the United States is more property than all U.S. burglars combined. And this is accelerating at a rate of 20% a year. So how this basically works is if someone has a little bag of pot in their truck, they can take the truck, the car, the house, the business, any property they have, and force them to prove that they weren't using it as proceeds of crime. Now, of course, a lot of our city and state and provincial budgets are very strained. So taxing and stealing more money from them is the way to pad those profits and those capacities to be be able to pay for this kind of stuff. Canada, we're no angels either. You can see here in Toronto, that's exactly what's happening. They steal the money from someone who might have some drugs or whatnot, and they take it and they, of course, give it to who? Well, the mayor. The mayor gets money to run his campaigns, run his re-elections, and then, of course, they hire more police and more, enforcement to deal with some of these problems. Now, if marijuana became legal, that would be a big problem, because then all of a sudden you'd have to find more work for these police, who, of course, contribute to the pension funds, who, of course, buy the drug companies to be able to do what they got to do and to actually justify their labor. So, of course, we don't want people driving around impaired. We don't want people driving around on Oxycontin and painkillers and Vicodin and SSRIs and all that type of stuff. So, yeah, we want that tested, and we want to also understand that marijuana arrests outnumber those for violent crimes. Do you think it might be a decent idea to try and concentrate some more of our resources on violent crimes versus locking people up for using marijuana or small quantities of marijuana? Now, there's a reason for that. Incarceration of, this is America, this is just 1920 to 2006. This is a huge straight line forward. If you're an investor, you would very much love that line in that direction. That's absolutely great. I mean, these numbers are huge in investing in prisons, and that is, of course, exactly what private companies do, like some of these guys here. And Geode, and you have Prudential, State Street, Wells Fargo, who, of course, these companies themselves are tucked nicely inside the pension plans, which are the very pension plans like the city of New York is still investing in private prisons. Keep marijuana illegal, which is one of the more popular drugs, one of the more baseline drugs that a lot of people use, because that locks up, that gives the capacity to lock up and throw away the key, civil asset forfeiture, and private pensions. We're told that the government needs to protect teens while it legalizes pot. Great. Why is Vicodin legal? Why are these prescriptions going to children as young as 6 for Oxycontin in order for these drug companies to be able to keep their patents so the pension funds can keep their money rolling in? That's all that's going on here, folks. Don't start talking about trying to protect our kids when this is happening, and we'll go through a couple things here. You're trying to protect kids. These kids are messed up. These kids are shotgunning Monster energy drinks and Red Bull and walking into class. That is not healthy. That's not even healthy for an adult. But of course, we have them investing in the British Columbia Investment Management Corporation, BCIMC, Monster Beverage Corp. And here's another company that you guys might know well, Monsanto. And again, we get to look at some of the banks and things like that who are investing in those companies. We also see things like trying to understand, we're trying to deal with addictions. We're making our kids screen junkies. And what does this mean? Well, it basically means that these screens, they affect the brain's frontal cortex, which controls executive functioning, including impulse control, in exactly the same way that cocaine does. The dopamine levels and receptors, and they call it digital heroin. Now, this isn't some random guy or me saying this. This is the Pentagon, the United States Navy, and Chinese researchers all finding the exact same things are happening with these things. And of course, this is the United States. This is the Naval Medical Research Institute. Lack of concentration. Is that similar to something that we are diagnosing our kids with, like ADD, anxiety? For all you guys out there, impotence. You might want to consider what you're doing with those things. Loss of memory. Increased fatigability. So we can clearly see there's definitely things that those cause, and we have Yale University telling us that they cause behavioral disorders in offspring. How did they figure this out? That they were studying mice, and they found that the mice were exposed to radiation tended to be more hyperactive. Reduced memory capacity. Well. Taylor attributed the behavioral changes to the effect of pregnancy on the development of neurons in the prefrontal cortex. How do we solve that problem? Well, of course, we want to make sure our kids are doing this every day on the iPhones and iPads and everything else. And then we turn around and we get them jacked up on Monster energy drinks, which is totally safe, of course. We get them on these iPads. They're fully addicted. They can't pay attention. And then we say, what's wrong with our kids? They need Ritalin. They need Adderall. They need methylphenidate and amphetamines in order to go to school and be able to pay attention. And who makes those products? Well, of course, that's Novartis, who owns Sandoz, who makes products like Ritalin. And Novartis also makes these highly powered opiates, which, of course, they're trying to get our kids addicted to, our adults addicted to. And, of course, they say, wait a minute, we got to make sure everybody's safe about this. Now, This is what's interesting. It's actually the prescription opioids deaths have quadrupled since 1999. Now, if you go look at any chart about this stuff, you will see that these numbers are skyrocketing, and as well, the prescriptions are skyrocketing. If I can do a quick arrow on the screen here, it just kind of goes like this when you look at the prescriptions of opioids. So you can find that out yourselves, folks. It's out there, so there's no reason to believe that there would be anything changing from this, or those sales and those issues wouldn't be exactly the same. Now, what I have an issue is this. In Vancouver, they're approving a property tax hike to fight overdose crisis. Well, of course, Vancouver's broke and all our cities are broke and we have our pension issues and whatnot. It's only going to be $4 for condo owners and there's only going to be that. Well, what about this? Couldn't we maybe consider to take a small chunk of money from these guys who are profiting on getting our kids and everyone else addicted to these drugs? Couldn't we just, instead of hiking our property taxes, couldn't we take some of this money? No, that would hurt those pension fund returns. And also, here's another thing. This is a small aside for you guys. We're purchasing carbon credits and we're basically stealing money from our schools, but in this case where the issue becomes is our hospitals. We're stealing money from our hospitals, which could be going towards, yes, paying for the beds, paying for the treatment, paying for the addiction centers and whatnot. This is what we're doing. Now, where is that money going from the carbon offsets? Where exactly might that be going? Well, the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. The money goes into the people who are donating into the campaign coffers of these people in order to get elected. Yes, that's right, folks. Interfor Corporation was a huge beneficiary of those carbon exchanges, Canfor, and of course, ARC Resources. All companies who donated to the BC Liberals, and of course, all companies who are investments of the British Columbia Investment Management Corporation, which is basically run by the BC Liberals. Now let's talk about cancer. The truth about chemo. Well, cancer drugs, it's a huge industry. We're talking about $200 billion a year. It could be more. Probably is quite a bit more with medical equipment, chemo, everything else involved. Now, we can also talk about things like smoking, which is a huge cause of cancer, of course, out there. We see lung cancer, just tens of thousands. It's in the millions. You saw the chart earlier, the bit earlier, 100 million people since World War I and II or the 20th century. I mean, those are astronomical numbers. Why is that? Well, of course, they are invested, our pension funds, in smoking. And why wouldn't they be invested in smoking? Because you can see the reality becomes that pot and cancer. It makes people get cancer. And what happens is these guys make massive amounts of money off of these drugs. CBD, what if it helps kill cancer? What if it helps deal with cancer? You guys should do your own research on this. If you know anyone with cancer, you should be passing this information on. This is a marijuana derivative, of course, which is illegal and it's terrible and we got to protect our kids. What if this actually did this? We're talking about a $200 billion a year industry. What if 10, 20, 30, 40% of their profits were cut? What would that do to the investments of the pension fund companies? Is there maybe a reason why this file is taking so long? Yes, it's that cancer money. And of course, we can see here companies like Roche Pharmaceuticals, $300 to make it, $13,000, right? And who's invested in Roche? Of course, it's our pension funds, all of them, literally all of them. Now, the government also has a patent on this stuff, and they say it has no medical value, but yet they have a patent on it. So what are they doing? They're basically protecting the profits of these companies in exchange for keeping our children, our people sick, addicted to drugs, Ritalin, opioids, everything else in between. What else could be going on? Well, the CBC is reporting Loblaws looks to get in on the medical marijuana business. Excellent for them. Nothing against Loblaws, but they just so happen to be a huge investment of our pension funds. And of course, they let us tell us dispensing is what they want to do. They don't want to grow it, they just want to dispense it. And they let us know we're an industry that is extremely effective at managing controlled substances. Like, of course, Ritalin, like, of course, Vicodin, and everything else in between. So are we putting ourselves in a position by the media, the government, and everyone else that's trying to tell us, hey, you guys better be watching out for these biker gangs or some guy making this stuff in a trailer or it's all coming over for China? Or is it the reality that these are actually just side effects mostly where people are getting hooked on, Ritalin, Vicodin, all these other things for something might happen in a ski accident, and instead of just, taking the pain or doing it, they get these drugs and all of a sudden they're hooked and all of a sudden they're on the streets looking for these drugs. You guys start paying attention here, folks. This is exactly what's happening. We shouldn't be concerned so much, yeah, of course, about these guys, but it's really these guys, right? We're glad they're on their side. Again, he who profits most from a crime is most likely to have committed it. We're talking about hundreds of millions, tens of billions, into the trillions of dollars that we showed earlier about how much money these guys are making. Then they're looking back on us. A lot of these drug companies don't even pay taxes. They offshore this. So we're being foisted all this stuff onto us. Our kids are being addicted to drugs. Everything else is happening, and we're getting the blame. We're the ones that have to pay for it, while these guys make tens of billions of millions and trillions of dollars off of us, and of course, we're made to pay. I really thank you guys for watching this. I hope you pass this on. Again, we're Press for Truth. This is our site here. Like, click, subscribe at all the places that you know well. And if you guys are thinking about a place to maybe find an alternative to these painkillers, find an alternative to these cancer drugs, you can visit these guys here, Skunk and Panda Shatter Shack, and of course Liberty Farms and Squamish. Talk to them, see if there's something else. Maybe there's CBDs, maybe there's other things that can help you with other things, depression, who knows. Maybe take a thought to look at that and understand what's really going on here. It's all about money. You're being lied to again, and thanks very much for watching.